Today we also have another awesome story about somebody in our congregation that God has just been doing some really cool things in her life. And I got to tell you this. This is a Bible right here. I really, really love the Bible. Do you guys love the Bible too? But there are a few sections, I got to be honest with you, that I'd like to kind of tear out. Do you have some of those too? There's some of those that you hear, Jesus' words even, most of Jesus' words, I'm like, yeah, that's cool, that's awesome, that's great. But there's a couple things that he says, and I bet if you're honest with yourself, you, like me, would also say, I don't really like those at all. And a bunch of them come out of Matthew 5 in something called the Beatitudes. And I just want to read 3 or 4 of the verses there. Jesus is teaching on how to be blessed in the kingdom of God and how it looks so much different than the kingdom that we live in or the kingdom that they lived in at the time. And here's what Jesus says. I had to imagine this was quite a crowd winner. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. I don't want to be poor in spirit. I don't want to mourn. I don't really want to be meek if I don't have to, and I really don't want to hunger and thirst for anything. Are you guys agreeing? Do you agree? Yeah. Most of you, if you're honest, do. So today we have the story of Sage Price. And many of you know Sage, and many of you are going to get to know her. And her story is one of being blessed in really some unique ways that most of us probably initially wouldn't think was a blessing. So we're going to have her come up. And I know she's a little bit nervous. And so I'm wondering, would you guys give her a big round of applause as she comes up? Yep, she was. Right there. Just keep everybody awake. So guys, this is Sage Price. How are you?
Good.
You feeling good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely having a respect for them getting up here every week.
Yeah. Tell us about yourself. Some of the people here don't know you. Tell us a little bit about your family.
It's myself and my husband, Brad, and our 2 daughters, Lily, Elizabeth. That's one. It makes it sound like we have 4 kids.
Because they all have so many names?
Yes, yes. Elizabeth/Lily is 7, and Cecilia/Sassy is 4.
Okay.
So,
say more about your husband, because we all want to know more about him.
Brad works at Catamount. He is the general manager of Catamount. And
so what you're saying is he plays golf all day?
Absolutely. That is
awesome.
Exactly what I think he does. Apparently not, but that is my perception of his job.
Okay.
So.
And most of us.
Right.
We like to maintain that fantasy.
Right.
There's no work in a country club or at all. It's just all golfing.
And apparently, the more you play, the worse your golf game gets.
That's true for me.
As a GM, that's what I hear.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys moved here in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You were living where were you again?
In Greensboro, North
Carolina. Okay. So you're living in North Carolina, and all of a sudden this opportunity comes to move to Steamboat Springs, Colorado, God's country, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how do you feel about that back in 2008 when you hear about this opportunity to move here?
Brad is very excited. I, however, was not. I grew up in Wyoming, just south of Jackson Hole. So I think I grew to love suburbia. The fact that Target was just down the street, the fact that you could walk to the grocery store, or that also grown up near a resort town, and also Brad and I lived in a resort town before. I saw a lot more opportunities for our family in the city. So my reaction was I personally tried to sabotage the move in any way possible at every turn I could. So
You really didn't want to come here?
No.
Okay.
No.
That's strange for most of us, I think.
Right.
But thanks for being honest.
Yep. Yeah. But Brad was really happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how was your marriage then at that time? I mean, you don't want to come. He wants to come.
It was great. That's very healthy.
Okay, yeah. And you're sabotaging his career.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. We were in marriage counseling at the time and had been for a while. And the marriage counselor at the time said in her many, many years, I don't remember exactly, but in her many, many years of marriage counseling, she had never met a couple on more opposite ends of the spectrum. So our communication was non-existent. Brad basically led his life in Greensboro, which was work and coming home and doing his thing, and I did my thing with the girls in my life. And so that was just kind of how we had worked out our marriage. I mean, that's just where we were. That's how we made it work.
Yeah. Now, you're a Wyoming kind of country girl.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you brought into the marriage that, maybe were some of the things that you could have been working on just a little bit?
It was very independent. I had been conditioned, trained a little bit, I guess, and not in not in a malicious way, but had been trained to never need anyone, to always not have to rely on someone else. And I don't think it was a be prepared for divorce type thing, but to be prepared for those ranch accidents. I mean, I grew up on a ranch 24/7, and there were plenty of times where the wife was left widowed because of ranch accidents, and that was a reality in our life. And so I was brought up by every male in my life to not have to rely on a man, to make myself productive and be able to handle everything. So
very independent. You're a very independent person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So she doesn't want to come to Steamboat, right? Brad wins, and they end up coming to Steamboat in 08 or 09?
08.
08, yep. So back about a year or so ago, you've been here for a year or two. Tell me what you're thinking now that you've lived in town about a year or two.
The sense of community has started to win me over. The family orientation of Steamboat, how it's, I had compared it to Jackson Hole, and it's so not comparable. The sense of community of Steamboat is there, the family, just the whole. We had started to adapt to the whole family, starting to become the ski family. Even Sassy at 3 was starting to ski, and I was starting to ski.
You have to train the Olympians early.
Absolutely.
Right? So
absolutely.
3. Uh-huh.
Yes. And when you're 5-year-old, I think she was 5 at the time, can ski better than mom, that's normal, apparently. That's not, in our family that was impressive, but not in other parents were not impressed by that.
Uh-huh.
We were just really starting to, Brad and I were starting to gel more. We were starting to communicate more. We were just starting to get on track more as a couple.
So things are going pretty well. You didn't want to be here, but now you're happy.
I'm accepting it.
You're accepting, okay. Yeah. But there's some good stuff, right?
Not
Say
as
some more
resentful.
about the good stuff.
Not as resentful. I had worked with a friend, and we did a couple of sprint triathlons. Let's not get carried away and actually do the real thing, but we did a couple of sprints. I was in a Bible study at CBS. Had 2 jobs, just like any steamboat person. You have to have a couple jobs.
Not only is Sage a very independent and capable person, she's very busy, or at least typically has been. She was working, 40 to 60 hours a week, doing
least.
2 jobs? Say more about your jobs. They're pretty interesting.
I was working at the airport at SkyWest, which my friends would describe as I had finally found the perfect job that had enough drama for me. Brad will say that a bored sage is a dangerous sage because I will create drama. I will find it somewhere. So
at SkyWest, what do you do? What's your job?
Goodness, it's so much fun. You're at the counter, checking people in, getting them ready for the flight, and then you literally sprint back to the gate and hand out all those little tags that say, this can't go on, fit in the luggage thing, and then you run out to the airplane, literally running out to the airplane so that everybody takes off on time, and you make sure it's ready, and you push it out with this big piece of equipment. You push out the airplane and send it off, and then when it comes in, you get this really big, cool wand, and you flag it in, and so no matter...
So you're actually in charge of 747s?
Yes.
Telling them where to go?
Yeah.
All that stuff?
Yeah.
Was that pretty cool?
Yeah. It was awesome. It was the best job ever. I don't have a problem with control.
Yeah. She was saying as we met this week, just the power that she felt being able to tell that, and the pilot has to do exactly what she says. There's no room for his own opinion.
Yeah, this one time I parked a jet in the wrong spot, and the pilots knew that they were doing the wrong thing, and they still had to do what I told them to. So.
So you're working at SkyWest. Say a little bit about your other job as well, because there's some drama there.
Oh, yeah. I also work at Lift Up. So I took the job at Lift Up because it was a year-round position. SkyWest is only November to April, so I was approached by Lift Up to come and work for them as the assistant food bank manager. So being in charge of the food bank. So
that job actually is more than just putting cans of food on a shelf and stuff. It's actually case management as well, where you meet with the clients, assess what their needs are, help take care of not just food, but other types of assistance as well. So there's a little bit of drama to that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So are you getting the picture here? Sage likes drama. Sage likes to be needed. Sage likes to be in the action quite a bit.
Right.
And so your life is good. You're adjusting to Steamboat Springs. You're finding places for your need for power and control. You're finding, legal outlets for that.
Right.
And then in 2010, you pray a very unique prayer. Many of us are going to be real challenged by this, what you're going to tell us right now. So tell us a little bit about this prayer that you pray. Your life is going great, and then you pray something. Tell us about that.
I don't remember the exact time that I had prayed it, but Sarah Barat had just come back from Africa and was kind of going through a debriefing period where it was kind of hard for her to adjust from seeing life over there and seeing life over here. And I just remember a conversation, and again, I don't remember when we had this talk or even when I prayed this prayer, but she said it's so easy for us to constantly pray for SHP, safety, health, and peace. And she said, how many of us are bold enough to pray for the hard things, for God, if it's your will, take one of my children, or if it's your will, give me something difficult to go through. Challenge me. And so, again, I really don't think I was obedient enough to pray it that day that we actually had the conversation or that. But I'd also grown up when I was a junior in high school. My mom had breast cancer, and I remember my dad, from when I was little, my dad would always say, we just pray, Lord, let your will be done. And so when my mom was going through breast cancer, he said, we sat down together as a family, and he said, we're not going to pray for healing for your mom. We're just going to pray, let your will be done. And if she is healed from it, then she'll be healed from it, and that's his will. But if she's not, then that's what we will deal with, and he will get us through it. And so I remember praying, Lord, God, do whatever it takes for my life. And I remember praying it on the way to the airport one time, just kind of, it was my kind of time to just be with me and God, because I was so busy the rest of the time that was just kind of God and I's time. And so I really don't remember when I prayed it or how long, but that was just, God, do whatever it takes in my life. And if it's extreme pain, then you'll get me through it.
So about a year and 3 days ago, December 15th, 2010, a big day. You didn't think it was going to start off like a big day. Why don't you walk us through that day in your life, December 15th of 2010?
It was a board meeting for Lift Up, which meant that I had to work in Hayden. I normally just work out of the Steamboat Lift Up. So I had to work out of Hayden, which meant I left at 8 o'clock, and I drove to Hayden and did that. Then I had to leave early because I had a big airport meeting, which was a mandatory meeting, which meant I was there when I wasn't supposed to be. And then I had to work the night shift. So I was at the airport from 1:30 in the afternoon until 1:30 in the morning. We did our meeting, that stuff. The plane came in, we unloaded bags, cleaned the plane, did everything. It was 11:30. We were getting ready to close the plane up. We'd actually done it fairly quickly. So I was taking we use a generator to power the plane so that we can see it, so we don't have to leave the plane running while we clean it. So that would be dangerous. That would be fun.
Probably fly the plane.
Yeah. That would be drama.
Yeah.
So I was taking the generator over to plug it in for the next night. And we use these golf cart type things. And I took, I guess I should back up about the weather. It had snowed and melted and then refroze. So it was about 18 degrees that night. So I got off the golf cart thing and I took 5 steps and I slipped. And I remember thinking, ooh, this is going to be bad. And I hit something. And I remember thinking, oh, that wasn't bad. And then my head cracked on the asphalt. And I didn't see stars. I saw fireworks. And I tried to sit up, and I couldn't because of the dizziness and the nausea. And so it was just waves of nausea and dizziness, and I laid back down and just said, okay, I'm just going to close my eyes until the world stops spinning. And the next thing I know, somebody came over to see what was taking me so long to plug in the equipment. And then the next thing I know, there were more people around with blankets and that stuff. And then we were in the office later, and then we were at the hospital.
How long are you in the hospital?
2 to 3 hours.
2 to 3 hours, and they send you home, right? You go home that night. Obviously, head injuries are something we're becoming more aware of nowadays. So you're home. You're not working at SkyWest for a little bit. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. But tell us about the next 7 weeks of your life after this injury.
I had excruciating headaches. I've always had migraines before, but these were completely different. I can't even describe them. Like, they're just, they would render me useless. Like, it was just basically like an ice pick in your eye. And then the back of my head, it wasn't a bruise or a bump or that, but it was inside pain, like back there. The dizziness, I wasn't allowed to walk up and down the stairs by myself. The CAT scans didn't show any type of, what is it called? Like a clot or anything like that, but they did say the bruise was bad enough that if I jostled anything, it would burst or do anything, so I wasn't allowed to do anything by myself. And the fogginess, just kind of not being able to pull anything out. And the exhaustion. I would be standing in the kitchen just getting a glass of water or whatever, and it would feel like every fiber in my body was about to give out. So I would just sit down in the middle of our kitchen because it was too far to make it to get to a stool or get to the table. So it was
very tired.
Yeah.
Your kids' names?
They didn't sound right. I would forget them. So I would write a sticky note so that I would remember my kids' names.
Tell us, I found this really interesting. To shower, what did you have in your shower? Can we talk about showers here? Pretty unique, pretty interesting.
I took one of the girls' crayons. The girls have crayons to write on our windows. And so I took one of their crayons and wrote shampoo, conditioner, and body wash. Because I would be standing in there and I would know that I knew what to do, but it would just be so buried, it would take so much energy to pull it out.
So you literally forgot mostly how to take a shower.
Okay, as I told Brad, I did not forget how to shower. It just...
Oops. My bad.
It just took too much energy to remember.
It took too much energy
Yes.
to remember. You didn't forget.
No, I did not
Okay.
forget. It just took too much energy to pull out what I needed to do.
Right.
So don't tell me I forgot.
Okay. What does the doctor say? You're meeting with the doctor over this 7 weeks. You're just in excruciating pain, and your whole world is just upside down. You can't remember
It's
anything.
a mild concussion.
He says it's a mild concussion. And you did something called an impact test? Mm-hmm. What did that say?
The first one, I was using 1 to 3% of my brain. And then the second one, I was using 3 to 5. And I stayed at 3 to 5 for the next 4 impact tests.
Okay. So there's something major going on here, and the doctors just aren't quite onto it yet.
Right.
So you're in this pain, you're exhausted, you're dizzy, but you're also really naughty during this time, aren't you? You're a naughty one. Tell us some of the stuff that you were struggling with. The doctor was giving you orders, and you were following those quite well, right?
Absolutely.
No.
They would say not to engage my brain so much, and I wouldn't listen. I would still watch TV. I would still... So they wouldn't let me go to Sky West because that's where the injury happened. So they could control me on not going to Sky West. But they couldn't control me on not going to Lift Up. So I would still go to Lift Up.
Mm-hmm. And what other things were you doing at that time that you were told by the doctors not to?
Driving.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Driving your car.
Yeah.
And did Brad know about all these things?
No.
Okay, so you were kind of you were naughty. You weren't telling your husband what some of your restrictions are. You weren't reaching out for help.
Not at all.
You were still doing as much as you could possibly do.
Yeah.
Even though your brain was functioning at 3 to 5% of its ability.
Right.
Okay.
So I would get up with the kids in the morning and help get them off to school, and that would exhaust me. And obviously I'm not that good of an actress because Brad still, people who would see me could tell that there was something wrong. So I would just keep myself away from people who knew me. But Brad could read through it, and I would help as much as I could, and then Brad knew that I wasn't supposed to go places because obviously the doctor's keeping me from Sky West. That means that there's something wrong. So, but I would get the girls off to school, and that would wear me out. I would have to go take a 4-hour nap. But I would still try to go to the grocery store. I would still try to function as normally as possible when I was not supposed to be doing anything.
Right. Again, some insight into Sage. She's very driven and always on the go, and so this is definitely putting a cramp in your style for that. Things change then. After about 7 weeks, a friend comes over. Tell us just briefly how we get from there to what your prescription for getting better is. People are going to be real interested in how you get better from one of these things.
So a friend came over, and wearing a beanie helped because it put pressure on there, and it also gave the girls, because it's not like a shoulder injury or a leg injury or anything like that, so there's nothing physical, so the girls can tell that they just know mommy's really kind of mean right now because I can't function, so it makes me very irritable. And so my friend came over, and I have that hat on, and I have the sunglasses on, and I have the shades pulled, and it's just super dark, and she just says, "This isn't right." So she actually calls my workman comp adjuster and says she needs to see a new doctor, and she calls and sets up a doctor's appointment and with a different doctor and all of that. And so we get the new doctor and a new diagnosis of a double traumatic brain injury. And so what that means is when I hit the back of my head on the asphalt, it shot my brain to the front so hard that it bruised the front and the back. So it was basically like a shaken baby syndrome as an adult. So the treatment for that is seclusion.
Let me stop you there. How many people right now, if you're honest, are dying for like a week away from everybody? Peace and quiet. Does that sound good? I see some hands going up, especially around Christmas time. Man, count me in for that. Tell us what it's really like.
I think Brad even just raised his hand.
When I first heard this too, I'm like, oh, what's the big deal? That sounds awesome, like a vacation. Tell us what a week of seclusion. Tell us some of the stuff you can't do.
Nothing that engages your brain. So no TV, no music, no reading, no books on tape, nothing. Like literally nothing that engages your brain. So it's you in a dark room.
It sounded real good up until that point, didn't it? For maybe 5 minutes. That sounds good. Okay.
Yeah. So when I hit, it was like my brain went into overdrive. Like I would close my eyes and literally see like a laser show, just lights everywhere, racing thoughts of where are the girls, what are the girls doing, and what's going on. So that's been going on for 7 weeks. And the doctor says you need to go into a dark room. And so you're in a dark room by yourself with these racing thoughts. So I counted so first of all, I went to a friend's house because reality of having 2 kids and your own house where I had already been so disobedient, nobody would let me stay there. I went to a friend's house and they had a pine ceiling, and I would count all of the dots on the ceiling. Okay, that's engaging your brain. I wouldn't remember how many I had just counted, so I'd start over and count again. In the shower, I would count how many rocks were in the shower in their little stone, and so then I would get bored with that, so I'd count how many heart-shaped rocks were in there, or how many light stones, but I couldn't remember how many I just counted, so I would just make up new things every time.
So it's hard to shut it off, isn't it?
Oh, it's so hard. And they wouldn't give me medicine for it because they needed it to shut down naturally. So
after a period of time of you getting some seclusion, relief starts to come with some meds. Yeah. Tell us.
So the doctor, finally, I was in seclusion at my friend's house for about a week here. And so they finally gave me some sleeping pills. And so I would take the sleeping pills at night, and then I would be awake during the morning. And I have to put a little disclaimer, this is not doctor recommended, not doctor ordered. I would take a sleeping pill in the afternoon too, so that I could actually sleep.
Because if you can't engage your brain, you might as well just be asleep.
Right.
Right? And
right.
That's the theory behind it?
Right,
okay.
Yeah.
But that's actually helping you get better.
Right.
You just need some time to unwind.
Yeah.
And all that.
Yeah. And then, so I had to be in seclusion for 3 weeks. So I actually went to my parents' house up in Wyoming to finish it out.
So now, after all this, you're feeling quite a bit better.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. I ended up going on, after 7 months of dealing with it and learning how to deal with life, I ended up on a new medication. After several different trials, we ended up on a new medication. And so for the past 5 months, I've been on that, and it's been amazing. Huge.
And you feel like you're starting to be yourself again.
Yeah.
A lot because a friend jumped in here as well. So it's a crazy story, but it all stemmed from a prayer that apparently Sarah Brott talked you into. And so she's to blame.
Thank you, Sarah.
I think in all of this. But seriously, tell us, I mean, God, you see that God has answered this bold prayer of yours in ways that you probably wouldn't have normally looked for. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how God has answered this bold prayer of yours?
I don't think Brad and I were definitely on the right track, but I don't think if I hadn't prayed that prayer and been allowed to open my heart and take my independence away, that we would be as well as we are today. I can't say we wouldn't be together, but my independence was very much in the way of our marriage.
And you told me, and I think this is important to the story, if you let Brad help you with something, what would you do to make up for that?
I'd punish him in other ways. I would defy him, or I would go make sure that he knew I didn't need him in other ways.
Right. So you only had so much neediness that you would allow yourself to show. And how did God kind of break you of that?
He made me need Brad on every level, to the point where for 7 months, I was just like another child. And I remember at one point yelling at my new doctor and saying, I can't do this anymore. Brad doesn't need another child. Like, there has to be something that will give me my life back. So, total dependence on Brad.
Okay. What are some other ways that God answered that prayer for you?
I have to slow down. I physically cannot keep up the pace that I had before. Brad describes it as, I used to have this reserve tank. Like, I would go and go and go and push and push and just push through it. And when I hit the wall, I would have a reserve tank and I would pull from it. And now I don't have a reserve tank at all. When I crash, and there is nothing to pull from. I'm done. So I also see other people differently. Before, I would be very intimidated by those people that in my head I saw it as they had it all together. And now I see that that's something I was projecting on them, because I, as a GM's wife, especially coming from the South, a GM's wife is supposed to have it all together. And I think that's something I also projected on myself from my upbringing, that I was supposed to have it all together.
Sage was trying to I want to say keep up with the Joneses, but that's not it. It kind of is, though.
But
just to continue to project this image of the perfect wife, the perfect mom, the perfect community servant, the perfect employer who always had a million things going on, who was always great at what she did and kept the house perfectly spotless as well, right? It was this standard that you were trying to live up to.
And not once, never did anyone put that standard on me. It was all a standard that I had put on myself. And so, in turn, I projected that on other people. Like, in my Bible study, there were people that I would see that in my head had it all together. So I would avoid them because I couldn't live up to their standard. So I would be intimidated by him and not even approach him. And so now it's okay for me to let some of those balls drop. When a friend calls and says, I need to talk, no, you need to talk now. If I can't go out and meet them because it just doesn't work for me, it's okay for me to say, come on over. And it's okay that the house is messy. There's 4 of us and a puppy. Like, we live in our house. It's life.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, God also showed you an addiction that you had. Just say real quickly what your addiction is. Was.
I'm addicted to the rush of helping other people. Because before I did it for me, when I would show up, there was a rush. I was the one. I didn't necessarily know it and didn't get it until it was blatantly laid out for me one day. There was an adrenaline rush from being the one who showed up for anyone at any time. And then it was also blatantly shown to me that it was just like a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction. I would leave my family to go get that rush. No matter what we were doing or whatever, I would leave my family to go do that. Yeah. But it was all in a good name. It wasn't drugs or alcohol. Yeah. It was for a good cause.
Sure.
It was. It wasn't anything bad.
Yeah. I don't know. Do they call that the savior complex or something like that? So now you're feeling better. You're physically better. You're calmer. You told me you felt more lighter because part of it is you're just living in the truth of, the reality of who you are and what your limitations are. But tell us, as we just close up with a couple more things here, tell us spiritually, how are you feeling now?
I guess the big thing is so much lighter. But I just don't have a token relationship with God anymore. Just that, just not that token Christian that, oh, well, I work at a food bank. I'm doing my good deed. The being obedient and is very freeing, and listening to those taps on my heart from God, even if it's a tap to stay out of something, even if it's a tap to not be involved, and then acting immediately. And that's just given me the ability to receive the plans that God set out for me. Because before, I think God had all these plans for me, but I was too busy being in the way. I was too busy controlling where I was going and what I was doing.
Last thing, what advice would you give to somebody who is considering praying a bold prayer like you prayed back in 2010? I know there's some in this room that have been contemplating this kind of thing. God, take me out of just my safety and my health and my peaceful life. God, I want more than that. What advice would you give to somebody who is considering a prayer like that?
I think honestly pray it. God's going to know if it's a token prayer or so you have to honestly pray it in your heart, and then be 100% ready for amazing works. It may not be as drastic as a knock on the head, but it's going to be when it's most inconvenient to you. I mean, I had 2 jobs to do. I had 2 kids to take care of. I didn't have time for a head injury. But for him to step in and shake your world up, you just have to be prepared. And it's not going to be in his time. Like I said, I don't even remember when I prayed the prayer. I don't remember if it was spring or summer or winter. I remember it being on the way to the airport, but I don't even remember if it was on a training day or so. Just be prepared.
I was telling Sage as we talked about her story, it's in case you're not putting this together, here's what I believe. I believe God cares so much more about our relationship with Him than any busyness, than any accomplishment, than any projection of the perfect Christian even. And I say this with hesitation because we want you to be involved here at church too. You know what I'm saying? But more than that, I want us, each and every person in this room, to hear that God loves Sage so much that He allowed you a double traumatic brain injury and being needy and dependent on others so that He could have that time with you, so that He could shower you with His love and let you just experience that. And so I'm hoping if you're in a place like that right now that you'll be encouraged by her story. And can we give a big round of applause for Sage? Thank you for telling your story. Yeah, you can go ahead. Okay. I'm going to have Brad and Jody come up. There was, as I was talking with Sage about how did you get through this, 7 months especially of difficulty, and there were several songs that she was telling me, and Jody and Brad happened to know one of these really well, and so we're going to just kind of end with that song. But before we do that, I want to point this out. What I said to Sage, I would say to you, and I would hope to have it for myself as well, that again, God wants our heart. He wants a relationship with us more than anything we do or give or any of that kind of stuff. And I see that written in the Psalms when David writes in Psalm 51, verse 16 or 17. He says this to God, really. He says, "You do not delight in sacrifice, or I would bring it. You do not take pleasure in burnt offerings." I'm hearing David articulate these words. God, it's not all about the stuff that I'm doing for you, or even not doing for you. And then he goes on in verse 17. He says, "The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise. And so in the midst of Sage's brokenness, in the midst of any of our brokenness, is the place where God says, yes, I'm there for you. I think oftentimes we think when we go through difficulty, like where is God in the difficulty? We think if we start the difficulty here and we come out over here, God will be waiting for us on the other side. When that's completely false, because he wants to be right there in the journey with us. Nancy Lee DeMoss is an author. She says this, Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." Contrary to what we would expect, brokenness is the pathway to blessing. There are no alternative routes. There are no shortcuts. The very thing we dread and are tempted to resist is actually the means to God's greatest blessings in our lives. That's Sage's story, and the brokenness of her brain is when she experienced some serious blessing. And so let's hear this song that talks about that.